Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Eddie Marcus here again. And I want to speak to you this moment on the heavenly nightmare. The heavenly nightmare. Now, when I say heavenly nightmare, I'm referring to the fact that today, we as human beings and Christians and everybody else who say we have some connection with God, we look at heaven as being someplace else, rather than seeing what we have here, as I see as hell, and changing it to heaven. What we have here, ladies and gentlemen, is totally anti-God. We have people who are selling their souls for money. See, money has replaced the will of God. People are taking oaths who within the system of government here in the United States of America have taken an oath that they would follow a constitution. A constitution is way, way far away from the ideas of God, but it is something, it is a basic principle for a system of democracy. And you got oaths that are required by individuals who want to participate in the system, indicating that the people who vote for them can count on them to do the things that the oath requires them to do. And the oath means nothing. They would turn that back on oath in a heartbeat for money. Now, I want to say this. Donald Trump, I'm going to talk about it because Donald Trump, to me, is exactly what Satan is about. He called it a strong man who is hateful, a strong man who is racist and bigot, a strong man who will kill and destroy families and the nation itself, just so he can say he's powerful, because others won't do that. They have a little bit more respect for life than that. He has no respect for life, so that makes him strong. He has no respect for you, and he will murder you and your family and anything that you're about. And that makes him strong just because you won't do it. And he'll threaten you and do it. And he'll get you, my friends, to bend your knee and bow. And I say that about Trump because he represents everything that black people have been taught was godly. Some people might say, well, the white man taught us this so we can believe that while he acts like the devil. I don't know what his reasoning is, but I do know what the situation is. And I want you to know, ladies and gentlemen, that there are other ways that we can represent ourselves in this life. We talk about Jesus, especially those who are Christians. They talk about Jesus to express themselves as understanding what heaven is about. Well, according to Jesus' message on this life is that God created this whole earth and all that this earth is about, so that when humans are put here, human beings, that they can live by utilizing the resources that God has provided for them and the abilities that God has given them, that they may be able to live on this earth as though they are in heaven. But rather than do that, the practices and the evidences of what's happening in our lives indicates that we're doing everything that's antithetical to what heaven is about. In fact, pain and suffering is the name of the game. Now, what are we talking about? We talk about here and now. And this, my friends, is obvious to all who can see. I mean, just see. Those who can believe. But according to Jesus and the message of being born again is that everybody that lives on this earth come here and they learn the ways of the world. They learn the ways of here, the ways that causes the things of this earth to exist. They learn it. And in order for you to live the kind of way that Jesus talked about, in order for you to live the kind of way that I share with you, is you got to be born again. That means you got to renew your mind. I hear some people say, well, there are many ways to God. And yes, there are. There are ways to God, like you're a teacher, there's a way to God. You're an engineer, there's a path to God. You are a truck driver, that's a path to God. You are a ditch digger, that's a path to God. You are a carpenter, that's any job that you have is a way to God. However, that way alone will not get you there. There is a conduct. There are basic principles that you may follow in every way that you have chosen for yourselves. And that is love. That is love. And love is different than the way that we live today. Love allows you to live according to the path that leads to peace and prosperity and freedom and joy and happiness and your dreams being realized. Love does that, but selfishness does not. Selfishness is not about the things that everybody can brag about. Selfishness is about yourself. This is why it's so easy to be bought, to be sold for money and power. Do you know, in pursuit of money and power, people are prostituting themselves. Not only themselves, they're prostituting their families, their children, their baby, anything that they can do that will give them an advantage so they can get money so that they can live as though they are in heaven. And they don't care anything about it. And the world is set up in such a way that if you submit yourself, if you bow down and do that which the world requires, that is to give them more power, as Trump wants, more power, give them allegiance, give them loyalty. This is what the world is about. And if you want big money, they get big money to little easy things. You know, engineer, teacher, stuff like this. You make some money. But playing games, sports, laughing and dancing, they pay big money because everybody like to laugh. A lot of folks like sport. A lot of people like the kinds of things that's done that pays big money. So they want to get into it, not necessarily for the big money, but because they love it. And the devil knows that. So the devil puts big money on that. So if you like it a little bit, they can control how you get it. And it might mean you got to lay on the couch. It might mean you got to spread your legs to somebody that you do not want to spread your legs to. But you want that money, so you'll do it. It is absolutely crazy, my friends. And I've been saying this to you for a long time. You know what? The life of Jesus. Let me say this again. When Jesus came to this earth, whether it's true or whether it's just a story, the earth was as corrupt as it is today. It was as corrupt as it was at the time that the flood came about. And the flood could happen today. In fact, it's happening many places all over the world, flooding. And people need people in order to re-establish themselves. And the things that allow them to separate themselves, hatred and racism and bigotry and that kind of stuff, won't mean a thing when you need help. You don't care what color a person is. You don't care what gender they are. You don't care if they're straight or gay, as long as you can get some help. So I'm saying, why do you have to go put yourself through all of this pain just to try to gain something? You should absolutely pay attention to what is. But you can't do it if you don't know. So Jesus said, as he lived this life, that all of the things that God has provided that you might have under the guidance of Satan, under the guidance of the devil, under the guidance of evil, if you want to have something to do with heaven, you got to reject it all. Now that might seem, well, what am I here for? You have to be born again to understand that. But born again, you will reject it all. And not only will you reject it, you will uplift the ways that are proper and righteous that would lead to the things that are heavenly and divine. This is what will happen according to what Jesus' message was. We even hear in the Bible about Job, a young man who was blessed. And he had a wife, someone that's supposed to be close to him. When he went through struggles, she was all against him. Even told him to curse God and die. But for some strange reason, I guess Job knew the truth and he refused. Then the Bible also tells us about a good Samaritan, a man who was suffering, needed help. And people who were talking about the Almighty God would walk on the other side of the street to keep from helping this man. But another man came by and did exactly what was required to be assistance to this man. They call him the Good Samaritan. And then they even got a little story about when people went to hell and who was crying out for this and that. But you heard the story before, the Good Samaritan. You always talk about the rich young ruler. That's people who got the money. This is how important it is to them. What would it take for me to be saved? Well, take the money and stuff that you got and give it to the poor. Oh, you got to be out of your mind. Now, what did that rich young ruler represent? That rich young ruler represent everybody that got a little money. I mean, you don't even have to have money. You're going to turn your back on righteousness because you don't know it. But if you got some money, you are going to turn your back on God every day. And when people say, well, you can go to God different paths, that means something to you. But they didn't tell you about the conduct. They didn't tell you about the principles that are required. And so you just preaching, selling God, getting money from people, doing all kinds of things. Why? Because you don't know the truth and no one is challenging you. The other day I heard a white preacher on YouTube telling his congregation about the way they've been treating blacks and how God was going to punish them for that. And I watched the congregation. They act like, you better be quiet. I don't want to hear that. They were paying no attention to it. Why? Because they are bought into Satan's way of doing things. They are bought into Satan's way of doing things. So I say to you, ladies and gentlemen, the message says it is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to get into heaven. Donald Trump, all the rich people, let me just say all the rich people, ain't going to no heaven. Why? Because having that money indicates where your love has been. Having all that money indicates that you have rejected God. In every way, you have rejected God. Now, if I were a bona fide son of God, I would tell you the way that you can have your heaven on earth. You know, these guys who make these 40, 50, $100 million for playing sports, they're not happy because they're in the middle of a world but most folks don't have that. So all they're doing is just standing out, watching out, making sure people don't steal what they got, or trying to front. Basic message, ladies and gentlemen, is this: that you cannot buy peace. You cannot buy happiness. And so what's actually taking place is you're put in a situation that ties you down to this hell that we're living in. And if you can't buy heaven, if you can't see it and understand it unless you're born again, what's going to cause you to be born again? Will it take what's happening down on the coast, down on the in the southern borders, where Texas and where people are cursing one another, trying to do everything they possibly can to make sure that black people cannot have any life? That to have for a black person to have life means that they're taking life from them? That's Satan, my friends. That's what the governors down there are talking about. That's what they believe in. That's what the people are buying. But when the floods come, when the storms come, when the hurricanes and tornadoes come, and their houses are covered up, the cars are washed out, and 20 or 30 or 50 million people are suffering, then they want to get on their knees and pray to God. Why? Because the devil ain't got nothing for them, and the devil will try to support those who got money because they can get some of that money, and people would do anything for money. But except if they were selling heaven, they would probably try to buy it. But the way you sell heaven, I'll tell you, if I were unadulterated, bona fide child of God, I would tell you that anything that money can buy, you can have. And you'd be entitled to it. Because the resources that are used to provide the things that we have determined are essential for us are free. The talent and skills that's necessary for those resources to be built and made manifest, you the people have those gifts and talents. So all that is made by the hands of man are gifts that come from that power that you can't see. And it is for the purpose of you. Now, everyone that would benefit from this earth and what this earth and men and human beings provide, they are entitled to it because they themselves participate in the process of creating it. You go to a big store, go to Target, go to Walmart, go to Sam's Club, go to Otasco, and all of the big stores for whatever they might be dealing. Just think about them for a second. Whatever that they have in there are an expression of the resources that God has provided. It is an expression of you, the people, the workers, have created all of this stuff for the purpose, you think, for all of us people. Now, you use that, we the people, that's what the devil used as a trick. Because you're not going to get any of it, care how much you need it, unless you got some money. Even in politics, you got the Republicans say, hell no, don't give them nothing. Cut it up, they trying to get some welfare. This is our stuff. This is all ours. Don't give them nothing. That's the Republicans. Democrats come back and say, well, no, that's not too good. Let's give them a little bit. Let's give them Social Security. Let's give them some health care. Let's help them with the food when they're short. That's what the Democrats say. And all of it is short of the will of God. Because each of us should be able to go to any of these stores and extract from them exactly what you get or want when you go in there with money. Only this time you don't need money. The system was set up so you know you don't need money. All of the reason you might say, well, look here, how did all this stuff come about? It came about the same way it always come about. Instead of coming about for money, it's coming about as a gift from God to the people, through the people. And when you do that, there is no lying, there's no cheating, there's no stealing, there's no hatred, there's no racism, there's no bigotry, there is none of that stuff, no poverty. All of that is dissipated. Now, that doesn't mean that if you had heaven on earth, that some evil won't take place. Evil will take place until it's all gone. And when I say won't take place, let's say, for instance, everybody got the transportation they need. But some strange reason, some kid want to go and steal a car. They want to do a joyride. That might still happen. But one thing about it, it won't divide the people. That will be a situation, a minor situation that can be dealt with. And it will be dealt with by the thinking processes of the people who are responsible for the system that we live in. Now, if there's one thing I can say to you, ladies and gentlemen, before closing, is this. The churches that you go to, the messages that you've been given, if it's Baptist, Methodist, any Pentecostal, Catholic, any mosques, whether it has to do with Islam or whether it has to do with Judaism or any of those things, they're all crooked. Every last one of them are crooked. When you see Israel want to say they are the children of God, God's children, the ones supposed to teach the world how to live, they are bigots. They are big-faced liars. And the evidence is in what they're doing to Gaza. Now, does that mean that Gaza is perfect? No, Gaza is not perfect. It's just not as bad as Israel because they don't have the resources to be as bad as Israel. White people and black people. White people, of course, because they got the resources and the power, are as bad as the devil himself. Does that mean that black people are good? No. They just don't have the resources. And they do not, black and white, and any American or anybody else, they do not have what is required. And what is that? Being born again. So, this is my projection because I had a message last night that came to me in a dream. All these evil people on earth, wherever you are, and if you're not born again, you're an evil person. What you believe doesn't mean a thing because it changes every day. Born again is the difference. And so what's going to happen, my friend, when you expire, whether it's tornado wipe you out, flood wipe you out, cancer wipe you out, any sickness or disease wipe you out. And incidentally, those things could have been had cures, but they weren't profitable to have cures. So they continue to exist so people can make money. But all of the stuff that exists, that you go through, the role that you played in the dissemination of lies, you, my friends, there will come a time when you're no longer in this body. I know many of you don't believe that there's an afterlife, but I'm going to tell you, when you leave these bodies, if you are evil, and you are, if you're not born again, your life will be a nightmare. How many of you have had a nightmare? Some people used to talk about a nightmare when they get taken up and picked up by a witch and go take on a broom and go way up above the clouds, and then the witch throw you off the broom and you falling down. That's just one little thing. But it represents fear. It represents what you don't ever want to go through. But that's exactly what you're going to go through, a nightmare. And you have been in a nightmare before. You've been thinking, how can I wake up? Wake me up, somebody. Please, somebody wake me up. But no one will be able to wake you up. And you'll be caught up in that nightmare. Now, I don't know how long. I don't know if it's forever or not. But I do know you're going to be caught up in that nightmare. And I also know that you will not ever enter into what we call a heavenliness without the benefit of the truth, without the benefit of righteousness. You will not, without being born again. Now, I might not be an unadulterated child of God, but if I were, I would tell you what I'm telling you. Now, let me see if there's anything else I want to say before I close out here. I just want to tell you one other thing. Donald Trump is dangerous. He's dangerous because he knows that all of the rules and regulations that are maintained in America over other people, he's violated them. He was trained to be the child of ignorance. He was raised by parents who were ignorant, who were blind as a bat. And he is one of the worst. And when he threatens you, saying what he's going to do to you if he gets back in office, he's doing that because he realizes now that the chances of him getting back into office will never happen as long as people got some sense. So his strong man attitude is to do all of this threatening, promising you what he's going to do to you. And there are a lot of people in this world who have no sense. They are as stupid and ignorant as a hawk or worm or anything that's stupid and ignorant. And the fact that Donald Trump comes out talking that stuff, they feel they want to be on the winning team. And if the devil is selling them something, they are buying from the devil. In other words, it's nothing new because the whole world has bought into that will of the devil. Now, I didn't make this presentation as smooth as I wanted to because it's essential that you get the message from somebody who knows what's going on. And I'm not preaching to you today. I just made a few notes that might help you or help me to say to you that God is real and the devil is real, as you can see Trump. Now that doesn't mean that, and Trump represents all that evilness, but who is the one that represents all that goodness? No one. No one. Not any government, not any religious organization. No one represents it. And so you don't have to be ashamed. Nobody's any better than you. All of us are screwed. All of us are headed straight to hell on a jet. But we can change. We definitely can change. But changing does not mean that everything is going to be all right. I didn't know I was talking this long. It doesn't mean everything's going to be all right. It means that if the world doesn't change for better, we're going to be killed. Whoever is born again, whoever is going to be killed. It doesn't make any difference. That's the path that righteousness and goodness and love will take before it turns its back on God. And if you're thinking right now that I'm lying to you, if you're thinking right now that there's no way you would give in to something like this, that's okay. This is why I'm talking, because it's you already. I know it. You know it. Question is, what you going to do about it? Or are you going to wait around till that nightmare comes that you can't get away from? Think about it.